August 14th, 1957, 10:17 a.m., Federal Courthouse, Manhattan. Bumpy Johnson sat at the defense table, hands folded, face calm. Across the aisle, Special Agent Richard Morrison smiled like a man who'd already won. 2 kilos of heroin, found in Bumpy's Cadillac. 4 FBI witnesses. The judge denied bail. The prosecutor promised 20 years. Morrison leaned back in his chair. 18 months of work. The trap was perfect. There was no way out. Then Bumpy's lawyer, Solomon Rothstein, stood up. He walked to his briefcase and pulled out a manila envelope. "Your Honor," Rothstein said quietly, "the defense would like to introduce evidence that will explain what's really on trial here today." Morrison's smile faded. What nobody knew, what the FBI didn't know, was that Bumpy Johnson had known about Richard Morrison for 18 months. The same 18 months Morrison spent building his case. And what Bumpy had been doing didn't just save his life. It exposed the biggest FBI corruption scandal of the 1950s and changed how federal law enforcement operated in black neighborhoods forever. To understand what happened in that courtroom, you need to understand why the FBI targeted Bumpy Johnson. J. Edgar Hoover ran the FBI like a personal empire. By 1957, the Italian mafia was making millions in every major city. But Hoover needed a scapegoat to prove the FBI was winning the war on crime. Someone he could arrest without political blowback from the powerful Italian families. Bumpy Johnson was the perfect target. By 1957, Bumpy was 52 years old. He controlled Harlem's numbers, racket through respect, not violence alone. When families couldn't pay rent, Bumpy paid it. When corrupt cops harassed black businesses, Bumpy made calls that made it stop. But to Hoover, Bumpy was a criminal. And more importantly, he was black, an easy target. January 1956, Hoover assigned Special Agent Richard Morrison to build a case against Bumpy. Morrison was 38, ambitious, ruthless, and corrupt. When Morrison was assigned to your case, you went to prison. But there was a problem. Bumpy didn't break the law the way the FBI needed him to. He didn't carry drugs, didn't personally collect money, didn't commit violence in public. He was careful, strategic, insulated. So Morrison decided to create the evidence himself. Morrison recruited 3 other agents, Collins, Rivera, and O'Brien. The plan was simple. Plant heroin in Bumpy's car. Use FBI agents as witnesses. Arrest him publicly. Prosecute in federal court, where Bumpy's political connections couldn't help. Morrison spent 6 months studying Bumpy's routine. Knew Bumpy parked his Cadillac on 135th Street every Tuesday and Thursday when he ate at Wells Restaurant. Knew the car was unattended for exactly 90 minutes. But Morrison made one critical mistake. He assumed Bumpy Johnson wasn't watching him. March 12th, 1956, 8:47 p.m. Jerome Washington was a parking attendant on 135th Street. For 8 years, he'd worked for Bumpy Johnson. Not officially, but every month, $200 appeared in his mailbox. All Bumpy asked, notice things, remember faces, report anything unusual. That Tuesday night, Jerome noticed 2 white men in dark suits studying Bumpy's Cadillac. Professional, not street muscle, something else. 2 hours later, Jerome was in Bumpy's office. 2 white men watching your car, Jerome said. Federal, I think. Bumpy looked at Jerome's notes. Federal. After Jerome left, Bumpy made 3 calls. First, to Solomon Rothstein, his lawyer. Sol, prepare for a federal case. The charges are coming. Second, to Marcus Levy, a private investigator. Marcus, I'm sending descriptions of 2 men. I need to know who they are and everywhere they go for the next 6 months. Third, to Angela Rodriguez, a secretary at the FBI who sold information. Angela, 2 agents are running surveillance in Harlem. I need their names and their assignment. 48 hours later, Bumpy had answers. Special Agent Richard Morrison, building a case against Bumpy, known for aggressive tactics and questionable evidence. Authorization came directly from Hoover's office. Bumpy made a decision. He wouldn't run, wouldn't hide, wouldn't confront Morrison. Instead, he'd watch, document, and wait, because corrupt men always reveal themselves. You just have to be patient enough to watch it happen. For the next 18 months, Bumpy ran a counter-surveillance operation that would have impressed the CIA. Marcus Levy hired photographers with telephoto lenses. Their job? Follow Morrison everywhere, document every meeting, every contact, every suspicious behavior. And Morrison made it easy, because Richard Morrison wasn't just corrupt in his investigation of Bumpy, he was corrupt in everything. April 1956. Morrison met with Anthony "Fat Tony" Salerno, a Genovese crime captain, at a restaurant in Little Italy. Morrison walked out with an envelope. Marcus Levy's photographer captured it. 12 photographs. Clear shots of Morrison's face, Fat Tony's face, the envelope changing hands. June 1956. Morrison and Agent Collins planted evidence in a Brooklyn warehouse to frame a black numbers runner. The runner went to prison for 5 years on Morrison's testimony, but a 19-year-old kid named Carlos Martinez was sleeping in that warehouse. He watched the whole thing. When Bumpy's people found Carlos, he wrote down everything he saw. Signed affidavit, dated, notarized. Morrison met with Frank Costello's lawyer. Another envelope, another photograph. Morrison accepted $5,000 from Joey Gallo to look the other way. Morrison fabricated witness testimony for a search warrant. The owner had a heart attack watching federal agents destroy his business. Every meeting, every bribe, every planted evidence scene, photographed, documented, witnessed. By August 1957, Bumpy had a file 4 inches thick, 127 photographs, 18 witness statements, bank records showing deposits Morrison couldn't explain, evidence of planted drugs, fabricated testimony, systematic corruption. But Bumpy never used it, never threatened Morrison, never warned him, because Bumpy was waiting for Morrison to spring his trap, because when that happened, Bumpy would destroy not just the case, but the man behind it. August 12, 1957, 9:23 p.m. Morrison made his move. Bumpy was at Wells' restaurant, his Cadillac parked outside. Morrison had 2 kilos of heroin from another case. Pure stuff, worth $100,000. He'd kept it in an FBI evidence locker for 6 months. Morrison picked the lock on Bumpy's trunk, placed the heroin inside, wrapped in cloth with Bumpy's fingerprints, lifted from a glass weeks earlier. Perfect setup, unbeatable evidence. 11:07 p.m. Bumpy walked out. Morrison and 6 agents surrounded him. "Bumpy Johnson, you're under arrest for possession of narcotics with intent to distribute." Bumpy didn't resist, just put his hands behind his back. "You have the right to remain silent." Bumpy looked Morrison in the eyes and smiled. "I'll be out by morning." Morrison laughed. "Not this time. I've got you cold. 2 kilos. Federal charge. You're finished. We'll see." 12 hours later, Bumpy posted $50,000 bail. The trial was set for August 14th, 2 days away. Look, if this story is getting intense, hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed, what are you waiting for? We drop these Bumpy Johnson stories every week, and what happens in that courtroom is going to blow your mind. August 14th, 1957, 10:17 a.m. The courtroom was packed. 200 people, reporters, FBI agents, Harlem residents. Prosecutor Brennan's opening statement was devastating. The defendant placed 2 kilograms of heroin in his vehicle. 4 FBI agents witnessed it. His fingerprints are on the packaging. The evidence is overwhelming. Morrison testified first. 47 minutes. Every detail perfect. He described watching Bumpy through binoculars, seeing Bumpy place the package in his trunk. Cross-examination was brief. Agent Morrison, in 18 months of surveillance, how many times did you observe Mr. Johnson handling narcotics? Once, August 12th. Once, in 18 months, you saw drug activity exactly once. Criminals are careful, counselor. Agents Collins, Rivera, and O'Brien testified next. All corroborated Morrison's story. By noon, the prosecution rested. The case looked unbeatable. When court resumed at 2 p.m., Rothstein stood. "Your Honor, the defense calls no witnesses. Instead, we introduce documentary evidence that will explain what this case is really about." Prosecutor Brennan objected. Your Honor, I'm laying foundation now, Rothstein interrupted. He held up the manila envelope. Inside are 127 photographs taken over 18 months. These photographs document systematic corruption, bribery, and evidence tampering by Special Agent Morrison and his team. The courtroom erupted. Judge Whitmore slammed his gavel. Mr. Rothstein, these are serious allegations, which I can prove, Your Honor. Rothstein walked to the jury box and held up the first photograph. April 17th, 1956. Special Agent Morrison meeting with Anthony Salerno, a known member of the Genovese crime family. Morrison's face went pale. Another photograph. Agent Morrison accepting an envelope from Mr. Salerno. Another. June 3rd, 1956. Morrison and Collins inside a Brooklyn warehouse, placing evidence on the floor. Not discovering. Placing. The man convicted based on that planted evidence is serving 5 years. Rothstein held up a notarized affidavit. This is Carlos Martinez's statement. He watched them plant that evidence. Judge Whitmore leaned forward. Mr. Rothstein, where did you obtain these photographs? My client hired a private investigator 18 months ago, Your Honor. While Morrison built a false case, my client documented the truth. Rothstein placed photograph after photograph on the evidence table. Morrison with mob lawyers. Morrison accepting cash. Morrison in back alley meetings. Your Honor, I have 127 photographs, 18 witness statements, bank records showing unexplained deposits into Agent Morrison's account, documentation of 7 cases where Morrison planted evidence, fabricated testimony, or accepted bribes. The courtroom was silent. Rothstein turned to Morrison. Special Agent Morrison didn't find drugs in my client's car. He put them there, just like he's done in 7 other cases. Morrison stood, face red. This is a lie. Authenticated, Rothstein interrupted. Every single one. Dated, time-stamped, with witness corroboration. Judge Whitmore's voice was ice. Agent Morrison. Sit down. Morrison sat. Mr. Brennan, have you seen this evidence? No, Your Honor. Review it carefully. Court is recessed until tomorrow, 9 a.m., and I want FBI supervisory staff here when we reconvene. That night, Morrison sat with his supervisor and internal affairs investigators. The 127 photographs spread across the table. Richard, the supervisor said, tell me these are fake. Morrison couldn't speak. You've destroyed this case. You've destroyed 7 other cases. You've embarrassed the Bureau. Morrison was given 2 options: resign or face federal prosecution. Morrison resigned at 11:47 p.m. Collins and Rivera resigned the next morning. O'Brien was transferred to Alaska. August 15th, 1957. 9:03 a.m. Judge Whitmore reconvened court. Morrison's chair sat empty. Mr. Brennan, does the prosecution wish to proceed? No, Your Honor. In light of new evidence, the United States moves to dismiss all charges. Motion granted. Mr. Johnson, you're free to go. The courtroom erupted in applause. Bumpy stood, adjusted his tie, shook Rothstein's hand, and walked out a free man. Outside, 30 reporters surrounded him. Mr. Johnson, what do you have to say? Bumpy looked into the cameras. The FBI came to Harlem looking for criminals. What they found was a community that won't be framed, won't be intimidated, and won't be silent. Agent Morrison thought we were easy targets. He was wrong. We document everything. Drop a comment. Would you have had the patience to document for 18 months, or would you have confronted Morrison directly? The fallout was massive. Within 3 weeks, the FBI investigated every case Morrison touched in 5 years. They found corruption in 11 cases. 7 convictions were overturned. 4 innocent men walked out of prison. J. Edgar Hoover issued a directive. FBI operations in black neighborhoods required additional oversight. Evidence gathering needed multiple supervisors. Claims of corruption would be investigated. It wasn't perfect, but it was changed. The Morrison case became legend in Harlem, not because Bumpy won, because he proved the system was rigged, but even a rigged game can be beaten with intelligence and patience. 3 weeks later, Thurgood Marshall wrote Bumpy a letter. What you did wasn't just about one case. You documented institutional racism in a way that creates legal precedent. Thank you. Bumpy framed that letter because Bumpy understood real power isn't about who hits hardest. It's about who can outsmart, outthink, and outlast their enemies. Morrison tried to frame him. Bumpy documented him into resignation. That's the difference between a criminal and a king. Richard Morrison died in 1974. Alcoholic, alone, broke. His career reduced to a cautionary tale. Solomon Rothstein became one of New York's most respected civil rights attorneys, using the Morrison case as a template for exposing police corruption. Bumpy lived another 11 years, and every cop, every agent who thought about coming after him remembered, he's documenting, and those documents will end your career. That's the legacy of August 14th, 1957. The day a black man from Harlem walked into federal court facing 20 years and walked out with 3 FBI resignations. The day Bumpy Johnson proved the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun, it's a camera, and the patience to use it. If this story moved you, hit subscribe. Next week, how Bumpy saved Malcolm X from assassination in 1963. A story connecting 2 legends that changed the civil rights movement. Remember, in Harlem, power wasn't about the biggest gun. It was about the sharpest mind. And Bumpy Johnson's mind was the sharpest of them all.